The United States has spent decades involved in the Middle East, and at this point, a lot of people ask a simple question. Why doesn't it just leave? The wars are expensive, the region is unstable, and public support isn't what it used to be. On the surface, it seems like the U.S. could just pull back and focus on other priorities. But in reality, it's not that simple, because the Middle East still plays a major role in global power, and leaving entirely would create problems the U.S. can't ignore. One of the biggest reasons is geography and energy. The Middle East sits on some of the most important oil and gas reserves in the world, and even though the U.S. produces more of its own energy today, global markets are still interconnected. If instability in the region disrupts supply, it affects prices everywhere, including in the United States. More importantly, key choke points like the Strait of Hormuz control the flow of energy out of the region. A large portion of the world's oil passes through that narrow waterway, and if it were blocked or threatened, the economic impact would be immediate and global. Maintaining a presence helps ensure those routes stay open. Then there's alliances. The U.S. has long-standing relationships with countries like Israel and several Gulf states. These partnerships aren't just symbolic, they involve security guarantees, intelligence sharing, and military cooperation. Walking away would weaken those alliances and potentially force those countries to look elsewhere for support, including toward rivals like China or Russia. In global politics, influence isn't just about what you do, it's also about what you give up when you leave. Iran is another major factor. It's one of the most influential regional powers and has built networks of allies and proxy groups across the Middle East. If the U.S. fully pulled out, Iran would likely gain more room to expand its influence without opposition. That could shift the balance of power in the region and create new risks for U.S. allies. Even if the U.S. wants to avoid direct conflict, it still has an interest in preventing any single power from dominating the region. Military infrastructure also matters. The U.S. has bases, equipment, and logistical networks spread across multiple countries in the Middle East. These aren't just for local conflicts, they're part of a broader global strategy. From these positions, the U.S. can respond quickly to crises, protect trade routes, and project power into nearby regions like North Africa, Central Asia, and even parts of Europe. Removing that presence would limit flexibility and slow response times in future conflicts. There's also the issue of what happens if the U.S. leaves. Power vacuums don't stay empty for long. If the U.S. reduces its role significantly, other powers will step in. China has already increased its economic involvement in the region, and Russia has shown it's willing to take advantage of instability, as seen in Syria. A full withdrawal wouldn't end competition, it would just shift it in ways that may be harder for the U.S. to manage later. At the same time, staying fully engaged isn't simple either. The region is complex with overlapping conflicts, political divisions, and long-standing tensions that don't have easy solutions.